opposite the umpire chair in a row, or behind the court, behind the baseline. There's a photographer's pit where you can actually shoot out and in an upward direction, and they're directly at the net. Like
so 2004 U.S. Open, who was playing then?
Andy Roddick was playing, people like that. People like Andy Roddick and others. You know, he was one of the bigger U.S. names at the time.
Yeah.
But Roger Federer was playing.
That's right. He was making his somewhat debut in the tour.
And Sampras is finishing up. And Agassi was there.
Of course.
Hewitt. Hewitt was a big name back then. He had beaten Sampras in the final a few years earlier. I forgot the exact year. They all seem to blend together, if you tend for a lot of years. I had no idea, though, that it's now the biggest sporting event in the world. No idea.
So I understand now that tennis is one of your passions. You're also a player.
I was a player as a junior. I was ranked as a junior and played in college, but I never really, I pursued skiing and other sports in the winter, so I didn't take the time that I needed to really progress as a player.
Exactly, and you know, sitting behind the baseline, you realize how incredibly fast and how incredibly demanding tennis really is, as an athlete.
It requires a lot of athleticism. The thing that I noticed as it's progressed from grass at the U.S. Open to a hard court is that it takes a toll on the athlete's body, and it's also, they pound themselves, and a lot of them disappear faster now as a result of it being on the hard court.
For sure. So being a tennis player yourself probably helps you taking the right pictures because you understand
it helps with the anticipation, trying to get the ball coming off the racket. One of my goals is to try to get the ball with Andy Roddick coming off of the strings, being on and coming off. But yeah, the anticipation as a former player, it helps.
Absolutely. And so I understand, you know, being passionate, being so passionate about photography, that you and I share another passion other than tennis is skiing.
Oui.
And so you've been traveling around Europe, I believe, to take pictures of skiers as well?
Yes, I have. I've been shooting pictures of skiers for quite a few years, for like 25, 30 years. I've actually been skiing in your beautiful mountains in Chamonix since 1982.
That's fantastic.
And I've loved those mountains. I go back every 5-6 years to go visit and renew touch home base, as it were. And ski Ligui, and never get sick of the Vallée Blanche and the ski sauvage, Chamonix as well.
So David, I'm super excited to be having I'm very excited to have David with us today because he's going to be sharing some of his photographs. I'm very excited to be having David today because he will be sharing some of his amazing photographs from the US Open, literally directly on the court. And so we will be featuring them on the site as well, roadtotiebreaker.com.
Okay.
So that's really generous of you to share those pictures.
No problem. I like to do that. There's a lot of great photographers out there, and it's really a challenge to capture that moment, but a lot of them do. You know, there's a lot of them out there working. It's changed quite a bit though. I started off shooting the US Open on film, and now shooting it digital.
Which obviously makes a huge difference. Let's talk about that real quick.
Sure.
Shooting film and shooting digital, are the digital cameras a lot faster than they used to?
Yes, a lot more frames per second, so it's easier to really capture that moment and get that versus film where you got a roll of 36 and you have to change. And yeah, you really have to be more selective as to when you take the pictures. And obviously a lot more involved with processing. I believe the colors that film represents, like the Fuji, with the saturation of the blues and the greens, is a lot better than digital. I don't like the manipulation. I don't like the Photoshop and unrealistic effects you get with the colors. I believe they're more vibrant and real.
Okay. Well, that's a great input. And as far as the lens, also, what kind of lens were you using to maybe capture a closer look?
I would use a 600 2.8, and I would also use an 80 to 200 2.8. I shoot with Nikon, and I enjoy the fast lens to capture that action, as with skiing. Those are my two favorite lenses.
I know you have another passion, and you're so passionate about it, we have to talk about it briefly. Okay. You love hang gliding.
Paragliding.
Paragliding.
You call it parapente.
Parapente, exactly.
Parapente.
So you've taken pictures from your parapente. So
back in 1982, I visited Chamonix and for the first time, and I saw this is the birth of the sport. Literally, I would look up in the air and I would see these guys with what looked like just like blankets over their head, taking off the Mont Blanc and flying down into a soccer field in Chamonix in the spring. And I was like, wow. And then back in 1995, I lived in Salt Lake City, and a friend of mine is a paragliding instructor, paraplume, and he encouraged me to learn how to do it. And I was like, I remember guys doing that in Chamonix. And so I learned, I took lessons from my friend Steve Mayer at Cloud9 Paragliding, and he certified me, and I bought a wing from him, and had about 350 to 400 flights.
So, okay, hold on
like
a second, because
okay.
I remember you telling me also all the stories you've told me.
Yeah.
I remember one, I have been to the Rolex Masters in Monte Carlo, which is one of my favorite tournaments in the world. Right. Just because of the settings, and you have the ocean in the background, the peg courts,
yes.
the prints, and all this incredible stuff that Monte Carlo is such a unique place. Right. You had the authorization from the prince to fly over.
The story. Yeah, I was credentialed to shoot the tennis tournament, the Rolex Masters, at the Monte Carlo Country Club. And during that tournament, we as press were invited to the Sporting Club of Monaco. And there was an event to honor Andre Agassi back years ago. Okay. And during that meeting, I had talked to people up at the launch site, at the paragliding launch site at the top of Cap Martin. And Mount Gros, they told me you cannot fly above the city. And I, as a photographer, really wanted to fly above the city. And they said, no, you can't do that. You'll be arrested. And I said, well, is there anybody that can give you permission? And they said, well, if you meet Prince Albert, he'll give you permission. maybe. You know, they laughed. They laughed at me. And so basically, at this event, at this dinner, I finagled an introduction to Prince Albert. And I told him I wanted to fly over the city and to take pictures. And I have a camera on my chest, and I take it out. And so he said, pas de problème, not a problem. And he proceeded to go back into a back room, and he took a piece of stationery, and he wrote what amounted to a get-out-of-jail-free card. He said, you'll need to give this to the Monegasque police when they come to arrest you on the beach. And I was like, oh boy.
Because they will arrest you.
They will arrest you. Yeah, they're in their blue suits, and they have their white hats and the gloves and everything else, and they're very, they're big people. They're very strict. And so basically what happened was I kept this letter on me, and I flew out over the city, and I took the pictures I wanted, and I landed on the beach, and I heard the sirens coming. I'm like, oh boy, they're coming for me. And so I land on the beach, and they're coming with a very business-like expression on their face, and they approach me. They were going to cut my lines. They cut your lines, and they arrest you, and they will throw you in jail. And I was a memento, and I reached in my pocket, and I gave them the letter that was signed by the prince, and the guy gave me the twice over, like incredulous look. And he looks at the letter, and he looks at me, and he says, "Excusez-moi, s'il vous plaît." And he hands me back the letter.
So you kept the letter?
I kept the letter. I've got it framed in my home.
That's fantastic.
Anyway.
You took pictures while you were flying over the Rolex Masters. Would you share some of those pictures with us?
I did. I have.
You have. That's fantastic. It's amazing. I can't wait to see those pictures, actually.
Yeah. You'll be interested.
So, incredible stories from David. Again, David is going to be sharing his pictures with us on the roadtotiebreaker.com. Thanks for tuning in. Please spread the word about what we're doing. We're doing some really amazing things right here on the Road to Tiebreaker with David in Central Park, New York City. Peace!
Peace.